Hey DMAC fam, Father Nathan here with this week's Catechesis video. Catechesis is our process of growing in the gospel together through conversation and instruction. Right now we've been talking about evangelism, and in particular we've been using a framework called the Gospel Drop that we learned from our friend Nick Davis, a lay pastor and evangelist in Tucson. It's a really good friend of the church. And we started by talking about the gospel proclaimed in the worship gathering. And from there, we talked about what it means for the gospel message that had been just proclaimed to be confirmed in the sacraments, and maybe particularly in the Lord's Supper. And this week, we're talking about how to evangelize, or what it means to evangelize as the gospel is shared in Christian community. So, what it means to evangelize as the gospel is shared in Christian community. And our passage for this comes from Acts chapter 2, beginning in verse 42. And the writer of Acts, Luke, is talking about the life of those early disciples. So let me read this to you. The disciples devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. Evangelism through the gospel shared in Christian community. So I have 3 questions that I want you guys to think about this week in your Connect groups. First is, what was it about this gospel message? So when you think of the content of the gospel, what was it about the gospel message that allowed the disciples to live in this radical way that the book of Acts describes? Second, how did living in light of the gospel in this way as a community impact their local neighborhood? So what impact was it having on the people around them that they were living in this radical way in response to the gospel? And third, what practices do we share in our local church with this description of the early church? In what ways are we the same? And where are we different from those earliest churches? I think this is going to be a really fruitful conversation, and I look forward to learning with you and from you and alongside you as the Holy Spirit speaks to us this week on sharing the gospel, evangelizing through the gospel shared in Christian community.